welcome to Phil Castillo. He's a VP of sales for CommScope, runs the Americas, so a big geography, big business. Our title topic today is, as a sales leader, being right is overrated, more important to be effective. So really cool topic. Can't wait to talk about that with you. We're also sponsored by Convertive, who's a sales and marketing tech stack consulting partner. They do a great job of helping rationalize if you have too many tools, too few tools, how do you get the right ROI out of it? A whole bunch of kind of in the weeds marketing data type things as well. So we love Convertive. Also, as always, brought to you by Sales Community. If you're a member, thank you. If you're not, Tucker will put up a free link, salescommunity.com/summer. Oh, we're fall free, I guess, already. All right. And known Phil for a long time, lives in Newport Beach, California. And not to be corny, but I have to say, definitely so proud with you of, I can say, I knew you when. Definitely a great leader, always hands-on, helping the team, internal teams, customers, partners, fantastic relationships, a great coach, and probably one of the best interview presentations I ever had back in Chicago. You probably think I forgot about it, but have definitely fond memories. And athletically, he has excelled as well. He was NCAA All-American water polo player in 84 and 85, not to date you, and also in the U.S. national team, 82 to 86. And I remember also there's a cool story about you saving a life using your lifeguarding skills as well.
Yeah, thanks, Randy. That was a long time ago, the water polo, and I still remember that interview. I remember that.
There you go. Anyway, and then also from a few other friends, Jazz Sood, who's an exec at Palo Alto, says Phil is one of those leaders that cares before anything. He seeks to lean in and help make outcomes happen for customers. So very cool there. Peter Larock, president at TD SYNNEX, says Phil is the best, a channel sales great, and never a fish out of water. So kind of pun there, I think, given your
thanks, Peter.
Water polo and your body surfing and all that stuff, crazy stuff that you do. Steve Hirsch, exec at Mantera. I've worked with Phil across many world-class companies like Cisco, Avaya, and HP. Phil is a motivating, results-driven leader that develops top talent, knows how to execute, and competes at the highest level. He's one of the industry's best, especially managing through challenging situations. So it's really cool. And then Robert Rye got back to me. He says, "Hey, Randy, I'm on an Alaska cruise. Cell service has been bad." Perfect there, right? In relation to Phil, Phil's a consummate professional, has a great ability to lead teams, motivate teams, create a path for each individual contributor to map out a plan to optimize their earnings power, works well cross-functionally with his peers to reduce internal time spent by sales to free up invaluable customer-facing time, yielding increases in sales production and helping the companies you're working for sell more. He has simply mastered the art of selling on a global basis. So, pretty cool there. So,
wow.
I'll send him to you afterwards. So then you got it for your files here. So, we jump into the questions. So, after Cal State University in Long Beach, it sounds awesome, Cal State University in Long Beach. But maybe go through kind of what was your first job out of college, and then your career trajectory from there.
Yeah, first job out of college, I had a friend that was in the early networking industry, and I saw him with the first big giant cell phone I'd ever seen, and dating myself, right? And this guy was killing it. I asked him what he did, and he told me, and so, I found my way into a small distributorship right out of college. I was an SDR. They couldn't hire me. I had no sales background. I offered to work in the back of the warehouse for minimum wage. But after 30 days, if I knew their product catalog, they'd have to give me their worst territory. They did. And that leader was Fred Gill, who's still one of my mentors and one of my leaders now. And was a VP of sales for a whole bunch of years with a bunch of great companies, Emulex and others. But ended up turning that around, and I was selling early netware, local area networks to resellers across the Pacific Northwest and the West. So I learned so much during that time, and I was literally in the seat dialing. I mean, it was you didn't have time to go to the bathroom or
Best
anything.
training ever, right?
Yeah, it's the way we should all start.
Awesome. And then can maybe just go?
Yeah. So shortly after that, I kind of realized I wanted to move into outside sales, and one of my top integrators was these consulting ex-Anderson consultants, and they were selling software, accounting packages, and the commensurate hardware. And so I took a role with them and did my first outside sales role. It was once again, just a fantastic opportunity to learn consultative sales from some guys that were consultants. And so from there, had a number of different opportunities with in the manufacturing space. I chose a startup over Cisco systems in the early 90s, which sounds crazy, but it was a company called Calpana, and they had invented Ethernet switching. And a year and a half into that, which was a fantastic role for me, we got acquired by Cisco Systems. And that became the Cisco Systems Catalyst line. And then Cisco took all of the acquisitions they did at that time, and they made us their channel organization. They were almost 98% direct in sales. So they made us the channel organization. And then we started to acquire companies, and we grew from there. And that's what I did. I was at Cisco for about 9 years. After Cisco, I went to Avaya. I was my first true VP level leadership job, and I've been in a number of different VP level roles since about 2002 across companies like HP, working for you, Randy, CommScope. This is my second stint. Had the pleasure of working with a bunch of our friends at Oracle Systems, Oracle, and it had my career's it's fantastic. It's startups, big marquee companies. I've acquired, and it's been a great run.
Awesome. I mean, a lot of times people say, hey, what's better to work in a small company or big companies? They both have their trade-offs.
Yes.
Do you have any preference?
It depends. While I was I have 6 kids, right? So when I had 5 little kids at home and I was staring down 5 college tuitions, the idea of having reduced income with a potential for a buyout was a little riskier. So working for a large company through that time in my life made sense. Early on in my career, when I only had 1 kid, that was the time to do Calpana. And then later in my career, I've done a couple of other things where I've advised or been involved. And it's just, I think it depends on your risk profile. Right. Early on, do it. Go for it. Later on, go for it. In the middle, you got to be careful. You got to baby needs shoes.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those that are watching or listening to us, feel free to post any questions. And we got Tucker behind the scenes as always helping. So thanks for that, Tucker. So any comments or questions here, feel free to chime in. So tell us more about CommScope.
Yeah, CommScope. This is my second stint at CommScope. Prior, I was in a similar role. I ran the North American sales motion for the enterprise business. CommScope is, they're not, in 2022, they're a $9 billion company, and they make a lot of different infrastructure. By infrastructure, I mean tactile infrastructure, fiber optic cabling, coaxial cabling, antenna systems, cellular antenna systems for large venues, hospitals, airports. They do a lot of the 5G technology build-outs for up the pole. And we do also have a fantastic company in the portfolio, Ruckus, which does a lot of the Wi-Fi and next generation AI integrated into Wi-Fi.
Wow.
And so that's primarily what CommScope does.
Awesome. I know you got lots of great customers, but Cowboys Stadium is probably one of your best accomplishments, right?
Yeah, Cowboy Stadium. We do an exceptional. A lot of these venues, people don't realize that to bring cellular into the venue, it's not the external cellular network. They have to build out. There's regulations to the cellular requirements in the building, and so not just cellular, but all the fiber optics, all the Wi-Fi, all the connectivity to allow for ordering from the seat and all the venues and point of sale systems. So we do a lot of that. Allegiant Stadium was an interesting one too, Randy, if I can bring that one up. if you think of Allegiant Stadium, which by the way, if you haven't gone, it's where everybody kind of wants to go. It's Vegas, and you can see your team in Vegas play the Raiders, which means they'll probably win. But it's like Arizona's.
That's because they have an ex-Patriots coach.
That's right. That's right. But the field, there's a cassette where a bunch of the seats are on a cassette, and that cassette lifts up and pulls out so that the grass field can be moved out into the parking lot, because they don't want anybody but the Raiders playing on that field. So UNLV or somebody else plays there, they're playing on turf. But to do that, imagine all the Wi-Fi and all the cabling connected in all those seats, and being able to have that modular so that you can slide it out and slide it back in. So it's a lot of fun. Those are great venues.
Wow. And your sales motion is kind of mix of direct and heavy channel, correct?
On the enterprise side, where I serve, it's about 96%, through the channel. And we've got decades long relationships with some fantastic distributors, a stratified partner network and installer network. Once again, we make like stuff physically. People have to polish and do terminations of optical cable. We've got to install things. And then there is software and whatnot, but yeah, primarily indirect.
Any favorite channel partners that you have?
Well, we've got they're all my favorite.
Okay.
It's like my kids. When I had 6 kids, I'd tell one of them they're my favorite, and I knew I would make one feel special if I made 5 upset. So I don't want to make anyone upset, but I think our biggest 3 distributors right now are Wesco, Graybar, and Accutech in my space. But we've got a whole myriad of other distribution channels that do really cool things for us in specific markets. And then below that, we've got some fantastic partners, C2 Optics, IES, Miller, MC Dean, some folks that are just really fantastic contractors pulling everything together for a big project. And there's a bunch I missed. And then below that, even there's just a ton of installers and different channels and dealers that help us be successful.
Awesome. So certainly a lot going great. If you're at $9 billion on the go-to-market side, any kind of 1 or 2 challenges in particular that you're working on now?
Yeah, I think like every manufacturer coming out of this last cycle where we had supply chain constraints, and then we hit, as we exited last year, calendar year, and we moved into this year, and we ended up with some demand diminishing, and some of the things because capital markets, inflation, whatever, a lot of projects got stalled in the first half of the year, Randy, right when inventories kind of floated up. Because supply chain got freed up. So we, like a lot of companies, have been working through higher inventories than we potentially wanted in our channels. We're through a lot of that, I believe, in my market at least. I think with that also brings some pricing challenges at times. There's different parts of the market where pricing can move, where my competitors get nervous. I don't want to say desperate, but they get nervous. And so you'll see spot pricing move for different things. And it's been a little chaotic right now. It seems to be normalizing. But in general, that challenge, the inventory challenge coming out of COVID hangover, inflation, capital markets, it's been a challenge.
Wow. And then you guys got a few awards around being a cable innovator, cabling innovator. What's that about?
Yeah, so CommScope's built this system called SystemX. It's been around. I remember when I first came out of college and I was selling, terminal servers and whatnot into the SystemX environment. SystemX is a system for implementing infrastructure in a building, fiber, copper, all the different apparatus, so that it's assured, it's guaranteed. There's a warranty that we'll actually give saying that your applications will run on it. If they don't, we'll come in and we'll replace the fiber or whatever needs to be replaced to run your applications. So SystemX is this system, and we've kind of innovated on top of it. So we built a solution called Constellation, which is cool. It's kind of, it sits in front of an IDF in a building, and it moves a lot of technology closer to the edge. We've won a couple of other different things in the way we handle fiber and simplified things in the market. But bottom line is, the cool thing about those awards, it was at this big show, Big C, it's the big show in our space, was that we're continuing to innovate. And you're going to see this year, we'll see 5, 6, 7 more innovations around System X.
Oh, very cool. So our title topic is Being Right is Overrated, Be Effective. And got a interesting first leadership role story from Cisco.
Yeah. So, when we were prepping, or I was prepping for this, I was thinking about when did it start to hit me that being right wasn't really where it was at. And I remember specifically this environment. And I'll take one step back though. I remember I was in school and I always wanted to be smart, and I always wanted to be, have the answer. I wanted to figure things out. In sports, student of the game. It was always just, how quickly can I outthink my competitor? And can I pick it up quicker than anybody else in the room? That was kind of where I thought me being successful or effective would be. And I remember I was getting interviewed for my first leadership role, and I killed it. Randy, I killed this interview. I crushed it. I had the best numbers coming in as an individual contributor. And then when this guy that I was very close to at the time told me that, hey, I'm actually selecting this other person for the role, I'm passing on you, I totally was caught off guard. And when I asked him, well, walk me through why, and he says, well, Phil, you're very successful. You need to stop making yourself successful and making everybody else successful. And when I look back at that specific moment and why that happened, at the time Cisco was direct, and I was paired up with somebody that I had to partner with. That person had a real direct motion. I was the channel guy. I was threatening to them. And I had been so successful, I became more of a threat to that person. Instead of really inviting them into my success, bringing them in. I didn't care for that. I just beat the model into submission and thought that would be winning. And when I got passed over, that was probably the best thing that ever happened in my career, because it just knocked me on my heels and made me take a step back and realize, what, I need to be effective for the people around me, as opposed to, winning or being right. It was a seminal moment. It was tough, but it was awesome.
Oh, that's great. One of my early moments like that at college, I was a bartender at BC. So it was, sanctioned through the school. So you're, campus bartender, something like that. Great job, senior week. And one morning I basically overslept, and then I just got fired. And it was just like such a shock to me. But really, because of that moment, I was, who knows how old I was, 19, 20. I will never be late for anything. I'm always going to be early. You answer the bell, no matter what you're doing the night before. And you have those, those impacts, those, early moments, it's a slap, but it's like the best thing that can happen to you. So with you going forward, that's sticks with you, right?
Totally. You said something there too. It's a good analogy I use. There's perception and there's reality. And when you said the word slap, when they come together, it's those moments that are, when you get passed over for a role, or you get a review, or somebody says you did a great job. Those are the moments that sometimes are the hardest, but if you can grow the most, you grow the most from them. If you embrace them, if you look for them. So.
Absolutely. And then you got a second story from HP.
Yeah. So building on that, so Cisco had a great leadership role there, frontline, first line management, and then did a couple of other roles. But I remember HP, and Randy, I think you can get this. I was working for you at the time, actually. I was in the interim role running the networking business, and we were doing a training, and we were at some hotel right on the water in San Francisco. And I had 300 folks in the room, or 150 or some odd. It was more like 200 folks in the room. And we were doing some training. And our leader, Rich Girafo, came in at the time and was going to just impromptu announce that I was no longer interim and I was the leader. And so he kind of jumped up on stage and announced it, and the place went nuts. And to this day, it was like one of the unexpected, interesting moments in my career. And I remember Rich looking over going, I guess we got that one right. And it wasn't about me. It was about the organization kind of wanting someone that was from their roots. But the impact for me at that moment, Randy, when that room was going nuts and going great, you'd think I'd be on cloud nine. You'd think I'd be like, I've arrived or something like that. I was scared to death. I wasn't scared because I couldn't doing the job. I knew I could do the job. I'd been doing it, Randy. We turned the business around, if you remember, but we were moving into kind of a tougher time at that point economically. And I was realizing, I need to care for this. This group of people is counting on me to make the right decisions so we all stay employed. All these families, all these people, the responsibility of the weight of that role really impacted me, made me kind of reframe the way I looked at my role.
Yeah, from a leadership perspective, I remember one time I was at one of the big kickoffs, and the kind of my broad team was there, and John Clavin, who you remember, daughter, Abigail just got married this weekend, but just kind of sitting there and just seeing all these people, and people are fired up and going, and I said, John, this is really why we do it, right? Because you're impacting the responsibility you have is huge, but then the reward in terms of really being able to impact all their lives from coaching and developing not only what they're doing now, but then also just making them better individual contributors or better leaders or everything down the road. And that's really, not to be hokey, but I'm sure you'd agree that's really what it's all about.
It is. I'd even distill it even further, because what I found for me, it's not, I think it's universal, but and just a quick story. Remember when we had the banking downturn, 2008, 2009?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Prior to that, when we would do a technology deal, Randy, we'd do the deal. We'd provide pricing. We do the bake off on some testing, and we'd win. It was pretty hand to mouth. You do the right steps, you'd win. Once 2008, 2009, you had to do an ROI. You had to do a TCV. You had to show how it helped them with their corporate initiatives, productivity. It got harder to do deals, I think, about it. Yep. And I realized, that was a shock to everybody's systems when all the layoffs and companies started moving towards productivity. So I realized then, and then in this role, I really realized I needed to find a way to make, for my leadership team and my customers, I needed to focus on personal wins. Every interaction. What is this person's giving me time. This person is aligning their time and their effort with me. What can I do to make it a personal win for them in line with my goals, my company's goals? And so personal and corporate wins, instead of me closing business, became kind of something that I really focused in on. And that kind of kicked off this whole kind of mindset around, how can I focus, intentionally on being effective instead of being right?
So you break that up, there'd be kind of internal and external effectiveness. So what things come to mind when you talk about external effectiveness?
Yeah. External effectiveness, customers, Randy. I mean, what was the mantra of Randy? First time you ever stood up in front of everybody, we were expecting this 10-point, system and methods. And you just stood up and you just said, more sales calls, and follow-up. We'll get to the follow-up. But so in the end, I kind of starting with the externals, the customers piece. But, some of the critical elements that I figured out after that 2008, 2009 and as I moved up in my role, typically now I'm peered across with another executive, whether it's a CIO or a VP. And those folks typically are having the same challenges I have. They're trying to make their team successful. And so if I can understand and really focus in on, why are they giving us this time? Why am I sitting across from this person? What would be a personal win for them in this meeting so that I get another meeting? Not so that I get my point across, not so that I win, or so that I determine that I'm quote unquote right or I have the best offer, but what can I do so that I can make this time a personal win, valuable for them? Because then I'll unlock the key to the next meeting. And I kind of learned these larger deals, you win them 5 times, you lose them 3, and then you move through. And it's really about being committed to that process. And if you have some guiding principles around what are the personal and the corporate wins for this person, and you focus on them, that's awesome. The other thing I would say is you can't fake it. Intent. Intent is something that, especially in sales, when you deal with sellers, they can tell they've got great BS meters, right? They know because they've got high EQ. Customers are the same. They've got salespeople talking to them all the time. If you genuinely have the intent to make them successful and understand what it takes to make them successful, I guarantee you, when you go through that process with them, they'll be shocked. They'll be like, is this person real? Are they really interested in me? In my, why are they asking about how I'm measured or how I'm incented? Those types of things. And when you show true intent, they pick up on it. There's this saying, commission breath. Customers can smell your commission breath. I think they can smell your intent. People can smell it. They know. So literally, you just have to determine that you're going to go into these meetings with your teams and your customers and everybody, and determine your intent intentionally ahead of time. Saying, what's my intent? My intent is to help Randy for this podcast. How can I help Randy? How can I do the best job for Randy in this particular podcast? And then it ends up being a win for me. That's I think something that's really key.
Awesome. So good. So reminder, Phil Castillo here from CommScope. So if anybody has any comments or questions, feel free to chime in. So what about we got some good stories here. What about the Josh Braun story?
So Josh Braun, yeah, that's a good one. I pointed him out to you a couple times, Randy, on LinkedIn. Josh is someone that I personally like. If you don't know Josh Braun, Braun, check him out on LinkedIn. He's written a number of different books, The Badass Guide to Business Development and some other things like that. He's a coach for the SDR BD community, and he's got some great, just some things that I personally resonate with. And when I go into this intent mode, like what's my intent? Like mentally divorcing myself from the outcome of a meeting. When I walk into that meeting, I'm totally divorced from wanting any outcome other than I want to understand, I want to learn, I want to figure that why are we getting this time? What's the problem? And then eventually we'll get around to solving the problem, but that's a longer process. So really understanding, divorcing yourself from the outcome. The other piece is, he uses Chris Voss a lot. Chris Voss was an FBI negotiator. Chris Voss has got some of the techniques play for me. Some of them actually don't play for me. But Chris Voss has got a good book, Negotiate Nothing, I think it's called, or it's along those lines. It's a good one to look up and read. But Chris talks about really understanding the person across the table from you, putting yourself in their shoes. And it just kind of jumps on the back of intent and discovery. But that divorcing yourself from the outcome one was one that for me is just awesome. I go into a meeting that I'm nervous about, or I'm nervous that we're not prepared, or I'm nervous that we're not going to get what we need. And you put the pressure of a tough quarter on your back and trying to make numbers and deliver for your team. It's hard not to be tied to the outcome. You divorce yourself from the outcome, the customer sees it, your outcome is their outcome. And then you just watch. The whole process typically relaxes. You qualify quicker, you get in and out of deals quicker, and you're significantly more effective for your teams as an executive or even an individual contributor when you're not focused on getting something from the customer other than information and understanding. So that's the Josh Braun. I think there's so much more there that he talks about. There's one other element that I'll bring up, Randy. It's join the resistance. So you're in a meeting and you can just see the guys like, that guy. And you ask the questions like, tell me about, the challenges that you face or whatever, and you sense resistance. They don't want to give you information, or they don't want to tell you something, or they give you an immediate rebuttal to you being involved in their business. Like, hey, we've already got somebody, we're fine. Join it. Say you're fine. That's awesome. I wish all my customers were fine, frankly, but they're not.
Right.
And so instead of trying to convince somebody not to feel the way they feel or have a position, join it to seek to understand. So you feel this way, you're fine. What does fine look like to you? There's a lot of techniques to getting what you really want is information and discovery, as opposed to convincing them that you're the the best offer. They might have the best offer. If you go into every meeting saying they might not need us, we might not be the best fit, your opportunity for qualifying and closing, it goes up significantly. That's kind of the Josh Braun stuff that I love teasing out. He's great.
Awesome. Very, very cool. And you're talking before about going into potential meetings, may or may not be prepared, but we both have huge hot buttons around the importance of follow-ups. And I'm preaching the choir, but just amazing how sloppy things are these days, and just kind of recapping, doing them promptly, where are you at, what's going on. And then when you got the next meeting, the customer prospects can go through, okay, where are we at, what's going on? What are your views?
Yeah, you and I have similar views there. And you challenged me at a point in my career. I remember when I first met you, Randy, it was back when you had the note cards and you were doing the notes and the handwritten notes, and it was before we had iPads and some of that stuff. And I was like,
now I got just bigger pieces of paper.
Yeah, there you go. And so at first, I'm 30-something looking at you going, what's going on? This guy's got notes everywhere. And then I realized Randy's probably one of the most connected people I've known. I figured it out. He knows more people by a factor of 10 than I do. And it's not because, it's not because you're fantastic looking or you're the smartest guy in the room but my point is there's nobody that follows up better than you. So one of the things I took personally through that was, instead of just copying, let me understand why. Let me understand, what it means for me. So I translated it into, if you can respond as quickly as possible, meaning in the Uber, leaving the meeting, on the plane before you land, but before enough time goes by that there's forgetfulness and distance. If you respond right away and you do it in the right way, and we'll talk about the right way, you're basically telling the customer that you heard them, you understood them, and that you want more feedback from them. And you're just playing on everything I just shared. I think one of the key things, it's got to be quick, immediate. It needs to be no spinning, no selling, no ambition, no commission breath in that email. It needs to be like super succinct and just factual, saying, here's what we discussed. Here's the agreed upon actions and owners. Let me know if I missed anything. That's it. Don't put a big signature. Put your name. Tight, short, executive speak. And different levels of executives kind of need different types of communication. And it's up to you to try and figure it out. And if you don't know how to figure it out, that's where guys like Randy, myself, other peer, they can help you figure it out, because we've made that mistake. I've sent the long email to you and other leaders of mine saying, there's no way I can pass this up. We got to distill it down and pull some of the fluff and posturing out of it. But I think that's key. What else do you have there, Randy? What did I miss?
I guess when you say no commission breath, I might disagree a little bit. So, especially if it's time to get an order, it's good to say, here's where we're at, here's what's going on. And our expectation is based on what Phil had told us in the last meeting, that we should expect the order by the end of the month. Just want to make sure that it's on track. So if you're doing that to an executive person who's above, kind of who it is that you're dealing with, I don't know if you define that as commission breath or not, but I think it's okay to be specific, make sure everybody's aligned. And obviously you can always say, hey, we're happy to get the order sooner as well.
The miss there is the miss is when someone doesn't have the huevos to mention it in the meeting and then mentions it in the email. That's the miss. Yeah. That's when you miss it. You need to know when the right time is to ask for commitment around timing and process.
Yeah.
So you need, and Randy, how many times did we have guys tell us, hey, it's the end of the year and so-and-so's on vacation, so we can't get that signature, right? And you were in front of them.
I can't believe we did that. I freaking can't believe you didn't qualify and ask that. It's like, duh.
Just who needs to sign it? Are any of them going on vacation? We've agreed that this is when you need the product and the solution. To get that, we've agreed here's the date, which means we've agreed here's the signature date. Who needs to sign it? And those are things that you just ask matter-of-factly at the right time, and then you summarize in an email. By the way, there's no commission breath in any of that. You're not leading the witness. You're not, you're not pushing. You're just clarifying, understanding, clarifying. Those are like key, really good things to keep you in a zone that when you do need to sell, there are moments where you need to sell. You need to look them in the eye and say, listen, we can deliver for you. What's it going to take for me to show that we can deliver for you? I can have my executives here. We can do this guarantee. We can do this. You'll know when it's time to sell.
So lots of great nuggets there for external effectiveness. So if we think about internal effectiveness, and you got another story this time from Avaya.
Oh yeah, I give you all these stories where I got clipped. Avaya was my first VP of sales job. I was VP of sales of the West, couple $100 million business, and we were competing against Cisco Systems, who was moving into the space. And I came from Cisco, so and we had a fantastic first year. In the next year, I was number one in the world. I got to go to club, and at Avaya, it was a finance-driven organization. So you got to go to club one year, you weren't going the next year, So, and I actually made it the next year. And then we had a consulting firm come in. McKinsey came in, and then there was a cost-cutting model where they took out a whole line of leadership across a number of different. So they took every RVP and eliminated the positions. They gave me a position of strategic Cisco competitive something, and I'd have to, it was a non-role with nobody, and so I ended up getting packaged out. And that was, I just bought a new home. I had 5 kids at the time, and I bought a home. This is 2006, if you know the market, and it was just a shock. It was a shock to me. And I remember sitting in meeting after meeting after meeting there, thinking that they wanted me to be this change agent. Avaya wanted to become more effective against Cisco. So I was the Cisco expert in the room. So guess what? Every meeting I walked into, I had the biggest mouth. I talked the most because I thought that's what they needed. And instead, when I looked at who ended up kind of getting promoted and not eliminated, were some of the folks that were more politically astute. And I'm never going to be the best at politics, Randy, but I certainly could have done better. And I learned that at that point in time, when I left Avaya, I'd always done this thing, Randy, where I took like a little bit of your style or a little bit of somebody else's style, and I cobbled it together and thought I was making a good leader. When that hit me at Avaya, I'm like, no, I'm just going to be me. It's going to work or it's not going to work. And I got to tell you, that's kind of when I was the most effective. And I actually started to get, that's where my career basically took off, in my opinion, was when I just said, I'm going to be me. I'm going to lean first with my heart. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to focus on being effective. Doesn't mean I can't hold my team accountable. Doesn't mean I can't make the hard decisions, but they're going to know I want them to have personal wins, customers. And so that was cool. That's that story.
Oh, awesome. Tucker, we have a comment and I think question from Tim Radwanski. Great episode, Phil. I have your devices in my office and they've never failed me. There you go.
Awesome.
Is a question, how has your data / tech for sales and marketing helped make your team more efficient, or have you started to see the law of diminishing returns? So what's your take there?
I would say that I think this idea of like just relying on my past experience, Randy, if I'm reading this question right, if you're not constantly evolving and learning and getting these aha moments like, weekly, your ability to have increasing returns is diminished. If you're just going to kind of live on what worked in the past, you're going to fail. These markets we've moved into, remember that book, Who Moved Your Cheese? Who Moved My Cheese in the 90s? And that was like a shock to our systems where we used to just work harder and smarter and we get iterative growth. And all of a sudden we saw the first level of disruption. That's when that book came out. I'm telling you, there's so much disruption now. It's not who moved your cheese. Somebody's cooking with bacon. There's disruption everywhere. There's disruption. And so we have to be incredibly nimble to look for that and take advantage of or create that disruption. So I think there's diminishing returns if you kind of look at my background, unless I was evolving quickly. And so that's something I've seen you and other folks do as well.
And then kind of from this specific, I'll say the data or the tech stack, I think you've leveraged Gong and some other kind of products that didn't exist 10 years ago.
My daughter actually works at Gong. It's a disclaimer, but in customer success, and she's fantastic. But I'm a fan of Clary. I'm a fan of a lot of things that haven't made it into the tools yet. Leaderboards. There are some tools that have leaderboards. I'm really a big fan of leaderboards. There's some other methodologies. I love the sales methodologies, but I'm embracing the tech stack where it's right now in the current economy and where we're at. It has to make it very quick sense.
Totally. So, all right. Thanks for that, Tim. Anybody else has any comments or questions, feel free to chime in. So as we maybe finish up here on the internal effectiveness side, any things in terms of kind of avoiding, kind of blame or kind of things around ownership, things there as a leader?
Yeah. One super quick step back. All the things I said about the customer piece, they play. Intent, personal wins, genuine understanding, follow up, all that plays when you're an executive like me and I've got to go deliver for my internal team when I go into a meeting around budget, whatever, all that stuff plays. All that stuff continues to play. Even more so understanding their career goals and what motivates them, your HR lead, your finance lead, your marketing person. You understand that stuff and you get behind it, you get a totally different output for your team. As far as blame is the trust killer. Blame is the opposite of ownership. So if they're truly my partner and we have a bad event, let's say in marketing, I can't go with the marketing person and blame them, even if they're 90% at fault. We failed, and just having that posture, you'll get such a better outcome and be more effective for your team than being right. And it's tempting to, when we had some issues with some specific products, not coming out the way we want them to, it'd be easy to blame the process. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't do any good. You know that.
Yep, totally. So kind of great topic here around the importance of being effective. So kind of if you were to kind of recap or kind of summarize it in a couple points, what would you especially highlight?
I would highlight that if I were able to go back and tell my early self, I would say, hey, listen, you don't bow at the altar of being smart or being responsive or being driven, but instead look around you and try and make the people around you successful and make yourself more successful through their success. And the only way you can do that is be yourself, be genuine, have intention that is true around what you want to accomplish. People can tell whether you're being honest, and then being right. You know what? It's so overrated. No one's ever going to put on your tombstone, that he was right more often than he was wrong. But people will say things like he was a faithful friend. He was someone that invested in me. Those are the things people will remember, how you made them feel, not whether you were smart. So that's kind of how I would leave it.
Yeah. And there's really a whole kind of undercurrent in terms of just being authentic, right? I mean, everything that you're saying here, for sure. So really, really good. So you've been fantastic. So if you can keep it PG, any kind of PG Randy stories to share?
I'll tell the back end of that, my version of that interview. So we were sitting there, I think it was Chicago, it was the CDW offices. We were in Chicago. And I knew I was going to have to do this presentation with you. And so I set it up so you were going to be across the table from me. And I was nervous. I knew my stuff, but I was nervous, and because I didn't know you that well. And so you come in the room, and Randy, you're kind of larger than life for folks that don't know you. You've got a big personality,
But for those that know me, I'm like,
no, I'm just saying. you're engaging, right? You come walking in the room, you move the chair, not across from me, you move it to the end right next to me, like literally right up in my space. And so I'm showing you this book, we're going through it, and you're looking at the book, and about halfway through the book, you just stop looking at the book and you start just looking at me, just nodding your head. And then you reach across with this giant paw and you grab my hand. And I'm not a small guy, I'm 6'4", most guys. And you grab my hand, you squeeze my hand, you say, hey, you want to do this? We can do this together if you want to do this. And it was a great moment. It was fun. It was fun. It was awesome. It was so Randy Seidel, though. It was exactly, and we did it, by the way. We turned that business around and we turned it into a very positive business that HP still, they're still benefiting from today. So, yeah.
Great.
I got 1 million of those stories, by the way.
Great job. Well, fortunately, we're out of time. So, Tucker, thanks for your help behind the scenes. Thanks to Convertive for sponsoring. And for those that are not members yet of Sales Community, please go ahead and check us out and join. And Phil, you've been a great guest. Tucker gets this posted all over the social mediums, so we'll get lots of views in the next week for sure. So everybody have a great rest of week. And Phil, thank you so much. It's fantastic.
Thanks, Randy. Thanks, Tucker. See you guys.